If your stomach drops every time you check your credit score because you don't trust what your spouse might be doing behind closed doors, you do not want to miss today's episode. So we're going to be covering how to protect yourself from divorce and related credit sabotage and what to do if the damage has already started. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Divorcing Strong podcast. Of course, I'm Becky Sampson, your host. And so today I have to say this is a really important episode. Every episode is important. However, I was just telling our guest before we came on that, I've been divorced twice. I'm happily married now, as you all know. But I never in a million years thought about checking my credit score or how that credit is affected by, my former. And so I want you to know that he's got so much experience in this field and being able to help you understand, how that whole thing works. So we're going to be asking lots of questions about how to protect yourself with the credit score. So I just wanted to welcome you to another episode. Also, just want to remind you, as I always do, download the Divorcing Strong terms, because these are 100 divorce terms that I put together for you so that you can help you navigate the language of divorce legally. Because most people don't go to legal school or don't go to law school or don't learn these terms ever, and then you're thrown into the situation where you now need to be able to communicate with them. So make sure, if you want that, or if you need it for a friend, download it for them, and they can get that. And we are on every week, Tuesday through Thursday, and we're also on the YouTube channel, Divorcing Strong with Becky Sampson. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you to our great guest today. So on today's episode of Divorcing Strong, I'm joined by Jim Smith. He's a partner and co-founder of Fair Credit Attorneys. And I want you to picture this. You finally make the brave decision to get divorced. You're holding your life together with a calendar, a prayer, and a to-do list. And then you get the email, application denied. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your spouse missed a payment, ran up a balance, or opened something in the background, and now your credit file is taking a hit. That kind of punch feels personal in a season where everything already feels personal, and it can quietly block housing, transportation, and the fresh start that you're fighting for. So Jim is a nationally recognized consumer protection attorney with 20 years holding credit report agencies, banks, and debt collectors accountable. Before launching Fair Credit Attorneys, he spent 14 years litigating consumer class action nationwide. And in 2019, he partnered with a long-term mentor to build a firm dedicated to correcting credit reporting errors and pursuing real relief when those errors cause real life harm. He's especially relevant to this audience because he often collaborates with family law attorneys and financial professionals when divorce, identity theft, and credit damage overlap, so people don't get blocked from housing, employment, or basic ability to move forward. So stay tuned, because this conversation may be the difference between feeling trapped by your credit report and knowing how to fight back. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Jim to the show.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for having me. What an opening. That was wonderful.
I know all my guests are so excited about their opening thing, but I really try to do my best to showcase what it is that you do and what support that you give people, because it's so important in this space to be able to find the right people to help you. So thank you again.
Of course. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. Well, I I love the people I get to be connected to. And I always say this, and this is always a really interesting question to ask the attorneys, because you probably didn't wake up in the morning when you were a little boy and say, hey, I want to be this kind of an attorney and be in this
Yeah,
space.
sure.
So tell us the story of the backstory of what got you to this point, and what makes you so passionate about helping people in the divorce space.
Sure. So that's a good question that brings me way back to when I was in college. And the idea was I wanted a career in which I could help people that couldn't otherwise help themselves.
Mm,
So people that are in a situation where no matter how much they know or how capable they are, there's going to be some sort of roadblock. They can't finish what they started. And so somewhere along the line, I thought, law school would be the way to go. But I come from a blue collar family, so I didn't even think law school was really hard. I thought only like the uber wealthy became lawyers. And when I learned there's things like school loans that will carry me through law school, it really kind of gave me the opportunity to go to law school so that I could start a career in which the main goal was to help people.
mm,
It's always been the consistent thing. And like you alluded to, I spent 14, 15 years litigating class actions on behalf of consumers all over the country, which was a lot of fun and a lot of work and a lot of high risk, high reward, that kind of thing. But along the way, we had some cases under the Fair Credit Reporting Act,
mm,
which I found to be particularly, I could feel righteous litigating under that act. And
mm,
the idea is somebody has an error on their credit report, for the most part. It could be all sorts of different consumer reports, but let's say you have an Equifax or Experian or TransUnion credit report, and there's a balance there that says $10,000 on an Amex card, but the balance is $0.
mm,
So there's some error there. And there's a process under the Fair Credit Reporting Act that you can dispute it directly with the bureaus, the credit bureaus, and they're supposed to do an investigation. But what happens if they don't do a good investigation?
mm,
Now, somebody's trying to get a home and it's showing that they have a $10,000 balance on a card when it's not true, and their debt to income ratio is out of whack. And so now the mortgage broker is telling them you can't qualify for the best rate. And it's all because of some error that a big entity like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion could have fixed if they did a proper investigation. So the clients that come find us are they're in trouble in a way that they can't fix themselves. They've tried, but somebody's got to step up and file a lawsuit on their behalf in order to get the error removed, so they can move on with their life. So when Rich, my partner, and I started this a handful of years ago, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, that was the idea, is to help people as much as we can.
mm. And so when did you make that transition? Well, first of all, so you help people outside of the divorce space, right? But when was the transition that you started seeing the opportunity to help people in divorce to protect themselves with their credit?
Sure. Yeah, great question. Once we started filing more and more Fair Credit Reporting Act cases, a large percentage of our clients were post-divorce.
Mm,
So when I sat down to think, like, how can I help people, folks who are post-divorce, I could see you could help them if they just were aware of what was on their credit as soon as the divorce started.
mm,
There was, I don't know, a dozen or so clients where I thought, man, if they just would have known that this was here a year ago, it would have avoided all this headache in massive amount of headache that my clients were suffering if they just would have known. So I started to recognize this pattern in my practice and started to talk with more and more family law attorneys and raising it with them. And every single one of them are like, you know what, you're absolutely right. They don't pay close enough attention to what's on their credit before the divorce starts. And it also, as we learned through the process, that when the divorce is coming to an end, you should look at your credit again, particularly for joint accounts and authorized user accounts. And it's all geared towards peace of mind and creating these massive headaches that could take place if you're not aware of the nitty gritty of what's on your credit when you start a divorce.
So what would you recommend for somebody, like maybe they don't even know how to get their own credit score or get their credit report? Where do you recommend them they go?
So we created a free detailed credit review service, so they can certainly call us, and we would do a free credit report on their behalf. There's no hard inquiry, so it doesn't harm their credit in any way, and we actually go through item by item with them so that they understand what's there and they understand any potential red flags that they should talk either with their attorney through the divorce proceeding, or if they don't have an attorney, something that they should be aware of. So there's certainly that option. But there's also annualcreditreport.com is the only place out there where you can get a free credit report. And everybody, when they start a divorce, should take a look at all three, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, when they start a divorce, just so they have a baseline of exactly what's on there.
So you're really recommending, even if they're just considering a divorce, they really should, that's one of the first things that they should do is pull their credit.
Yes.
To be able to get an idea of what that is, and even when their divorce is final. Now, is that something that if they can go to your website that's listed right below us, is that they can go there to get one?
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a great place to go there. They can fill out, there's a contact us, their name, their email address, and shoot us an email, and somebody will call them back right away.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And so what is it? So what if you really are in that position where you're married to somebody that is very volatile and all about hiding and all about really sketchy behaviors? Like, what would you recommend people do when it comes to protecting their credit? Is there something that they can do?
Yes. Well, yeah. So the big thing that we do is when we review somebody's credit, we're looking at every single open account that they have in their credit report. Mm-hmm. And in particular, we want to know what joint accounts you have together and whether you have any authorized user accounts. And there's a big distinction there. So an authorized user account would be, for example, if one spouse has an individual credit card but authorized the other spouse to be just an authorized user. The authorized user is not responsible for making payments most of the time. Mm-hmm. But after post-divorce, if that authorized user hasn't been dealt with during the divorce, it still follows you along on your credit report. Mm. And so if the ex-spouse now who's in charge of it misses payments, runs up a large debt, whatever the case may be, that will negatively impact the authorized user as well.
Okay, so is that something that how would they know if they were authorized on that? Like if it's on the credit of their spouse, how would they remove themselves from their credit?
So that's a great question. So you have to pull your credit report when the divorce starts, highlight any authorized user accounts in which you're the authorized user, and then you have to, as part of the divorce proceeding, make that contingent upon the divorce. That before the divorce is finalized, you have to remove me as an authorized user from your account.
Okay, because they can't do that themselves.
Correct. Yep, the authorized user can't do it themselves. So what happens is, a year, 2 years down the road, they didn't even know it was there. Now there's late payments, derogatory things in their credit report. They're trying to get a mortgage, and the authorized user account is tripping them up. Now they're calling their ex-spouse, and their ex-spouse isn't maybe being very cooperative and all the rest. So dealing with it in the very beginning during the divorce is a huge leg up in making sure that post-divorce you've got clean credit, that's your credit, and you're ready to go.
Wow. First of all, that is very, very powerful with the advice, because I think it's you actually, before we started this show, you were telling me about a story about a couple 20 years later. So kind of tell us about what happened. Even though it was dealt with in the decree, it creeped up 20 years later. Talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So this is the other major thing that we look for is our joint accounts. And so we have a relatively new client who obtained a divorce, I think in 2006 or 2004. And in the divorce decree, baked into the actual order itself was the wife was to be responsible for her student loan. Mm-hmm. And that was all good for a long time. And all of a sudden, the student loan popped up on ex-husband's credit report 20 years later. And it was such a surprise that he thought his ex-wife opened up a new fraudulent student loan account using him as a joint account holder, because it just was so out of the blue and so something he hadn't thought about in such a long time. So I had him. He called me, found me, and one of the attorneys that I work with recommended he call me. He called me. We pulled his credit report. I saw that it was old. I saw that the student loan was opened in like 2002. And I confirmed, was it a joint account? And he said, yeah, it probably was, but it was for her to go to school. He said, but I have this divorce decree. And so he had it, but he didn't do anything about it. So the divorce decree itself, you're not telling the creditor anything. So the creditor doesn't care. The creditor will go back to the original agreement and say, like, yeah, but you signed this 22 years ago and you agreed to pay it. And he says, but my ex-wife, she agreed to take it. And so it's a massive fight. 20 years. It's much harder to unwind it 22 years later than it would be to deal with that during the divorce proceeding.
So is that something that they would send to the credit agency to let them know the court order, or how do you fix that? Something like that.
So it depends on the type of account, but it would be either you call the creditor and tell them one of the spouses is going to take it over, and they might need to do like a renegotiating. You might need to get a new account number, and that might not be possible. So the creditor might say, like, no way, if you're not going to do this jointly, we're not doing it. But at least then during the divorce, it's part of the process. Then everybody's aware that you made this effort and it didn't get fixed. So then you can put certain language in the body of the divorce decree that deals with it, including, credit monitoring going forward. And if the spouse doesn't make payments, then there'll be certain, problems down the road. If you're obligated to make these payments, if you don't, then X, A, B, and C. You can negotiate those things and put them in the body of the divorce decree. Which the key thing is you have to know they're there, and know that there's this potential negative impact if you don't address it right away.
And so I'm just curious though. I mean, after 20 years, did she still owe that, or was that a fraudulent? Why did it pop up all of a sudden in 20 years?
She still owes it. So I'm not entirely sure, why it popped up. I don't know, but it was a legitimate loan that they took out together 22 years ago. That was, I don't know if she made a payment recently. I don't know if the current administration is making a different sort of looking to collect on student loans in a different way that they weren't before. I'm not sure. But so through the Fair Credit Reporting Act, we'll be able to unwind it eventually. I believe, there's no guarantees, but I think we can help him and we'll get it fixed and removed off his credit report. But it's going to take some time, and he's, stressed out about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Is there anything on the front end that they can specifically do to protect that from years later? I mean, is it something that they can send to the credit agencies? I mean, I know you said they may or may not care, but.
So not to the credit agencies themselves, but to the potential creditors. They certainly can have conversations and apply for credit with the creditors themselves to try to get them removed. The authorized user part, we have been very successful. If the spouse won't cooperate, or it's post-divorce and there's this authorized user account there, we've been very successful in getting those removed from credit reports by contacting the credit reporting agencies. We've been successful at it that way. But it's really the biggest impact is for the two people to be aware of it. And then it's more than just saying, like, yeah, I got it. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Because that may not happen. And I've seen it a lot of the times where in fact doesn't happen. And I'm sure there's guests that come talk with you that post-divorce, there's financial stress and bills are missed. It's not surprising that during a divorce or after a divorce, you're not making all your payments on time because your head's all over the place. Yep. It's very stressful and all the rest.
Yeah, and especially when there's some kind of agreement in that divorce decree about them both sharing in debt, I should say, or paying off a debt or a house payment. Because I mean, we were having a conversation the other day, I think yesterday, maybe it was a couple of days ago, about housing. And, people think that just because you have a court order for somebody to actually do something doesn't mean that they're going to actually do it.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And in these court orders, the creditors aren't part of the court order, so they didn't get a
Right.
say in the matter. Right.
Yeah, they don't care. They just want their money.
Right. Yeah. There's, one item too that, as far as, spouses and you're worried about, soon to be ex trashing your credit. One of the big reasons to pull your credit report in the beginning is if you do have joint credit cards, for example, it'll show a rough idea of what the balance is during that month. Mm-hmm. So if you started the divorce and you have a joint, Chase card or whatever, and it shows $1,500 balance, now you know it's at $1,500. And if you're not using that card and you pull it again at the end, and now there's a $15,000 balance, that's a very good thing to be aware of, before the divorce is over.
Yeah, because what people don't realize too, I mean, you see this, I'm sure, all the time, is typically when you file for divorce, you are under a financial restraining order, which means you can't sell, you can't rack up debt, you can't buy certain things, and so a lot of times when you're going through a divorce, the judges will take that into consideration if they're racking up all of that, and you need to be able to prove it.
Sure.
I mean, obviously you can use subpoenas. That's how I did it.
Right.
That's how I won my case.
That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's important too with the credit. I didn't even think to do that. And I love when I find resources. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. The other thing too that with credit is, post divorce you might need to refinance, or one of the spouses may need to purchase a new home. And one of the first divorce related clients that we had, he was going to take the 2 kids. They were going to live with him, but he needed to refinance his mortgage to pay off his ex-wife X amount of dollars. He agreed to it all, no problem. He had 6 months to get it all done. He was okay with all of that. Divorce gets finalized. He waits a month or so, calls a mortgage broker, arranges to pull his credit and everything else to do a refi. And the mortgage broker said, yeah, no problem. We can do it. You just have to pay off all of this debt first. And he thinks, okay. He thinks there's a $1,500 credit card there. So he pays that off. Says, all right, mortgage broker, I paid off my debt. And the mortgage broker says, no, you didn't. There's these 4 other accounts. And he had no idea they were there. And so what happened was one of his credit reports was mixed with somebody else that wasn't him. So it looked like he had all of these accounts that he owed, but he didn't. And so he started to really panic because now he's got his kids involved. He's got to refinance. And if he doesn't do it within now 5 months, he's violating a court order. And so he was really panicked. So we sent dispute letters out on his behalf with all the proof and everything else that it wasn't his. And they got ignored. So now he's 2 months away from this deadline, and he's very much panicked. My only recourse at that point was to file a lawsuit on his behalf, which lawsuits, as you likely know, could take 6, 7, 8 months.
Yep.
And those are the quick ones. So now he was really panicked, and he ended up paying more to refinance in order to meet that court order deadline. That was the one situation that put me over the edge to do this sort of free credit review service for people that started a divorce.
No, I first of all, Jim, I really appreciate that you do that, because it's like, the court orders are timed deadlines. And if they're not getting the things done, and this definitely was a hiccup for him. It reminded me when you just said that, though, when I was doing the research on you, I was texting you going, okay, what is your middle name? Like Jim Smith. Like,
right.
So I'm sure the same thing happens sometimes in credit because things get mixed up. And so having professionals that actually know what to do is so vitally important. So it's very important what you do. What would you say the biggest mistake people make when they're just starting this process, or looking into problems, or even if they've had a spouse that they're afraid is going to rack it up and not cooperate?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is people will put their head in the sand about their
Mm-hmm.
credit. You know, our credit is very important, and if you don't have perfect credit, people get very, I don't know if ashamed is the right word, but they're very cognizant of it, and they don't like sharing it, and so
Mm-hmm.
they think, well, my credit's already not that great. I don't really care, so I'm just going to kind of put my head in the sand, and then additional problems start to snowball.
Right.
So it really, the biggest mistake is that they don't, even if somebody's telling them you should pull your credit, you can do it for free, take a look. They don't, because they don't really, it's like, it's like not going to the doctor, even though you know you probably should, because you're afraid the doctor's going to give you bad news. That might be the biggest mistake that I see people make.
Yeah, and it goes right along with the hook that I did for this show is that you're afraid to look at that credit for fear of what's in there. And then
Yeah.
whatever's in there, you're going to have to do something about it, right?
Sure. And if it's all there and it's all correct, then you have to make some decisions and work on it. But there's been studies done that 20% of what's on our credit might be wrong.
Mm.
So if you're not looking at it and checking it, you don't know. And I'm busy. Like we've got cases we file. We've got 8 cases we're going to file hopefully the next month. This isn't a one-off situation. It really impacts a lot of different people, and a large percentage of our clients just finished a divorce.
Yeah. So do you guys also do credit, what do they call it? Monitoring? Do you guys also offer services like that?
We will, while they're clients of ours, we'll pay to have credit monitoring done where they can access their credit while they're working with us. So we foot that bill. Yeah.
Nice. And is it something that you recommend? How often do you recommend people checking their whether they went through a divorce or not? Check their
Yeah, that's a good question. You should do it, once you do it once and you do a deep dive and you understand everything that's on there and you're good that it's all correct. Then, quarterly or every 6 months would be okay. There are services out there that will alert you if there's any change. And that's probably good enough. Once you do a deep dive and you're comfortable with what's there and it's all correct. If you do regular sort of credit monitoring, where you get alerts when there's changes made, that should be enough, because then if something changes and you're like, what's that? Which is what happens a lot. I had a
Yeah.
call with somebody today that's exactly what they did. It was I forget what kind of account it was. It was an American Express card. He said, I've never had an American Express card. Why is this here? So if you're not getting regular monitoring, maybe every 6 months or so, it's just to take a look to make sure everything looks the way it did. But
Is
it's
there
really
any
important to do a deep dive.
Yeah, is there any particular monitoring service that you would recommend?
Good question. There's a bunch of them out there, and I think that they're all relatively about the same cost. We tend to use Identity IQ because it's color coordinated in a way that it just makes it easy to read. But they're not the only ones out there. There's other ones out there that offer similar looking reports that are all relatively affordable.
Okay, awesome. And then do you guys also work with financial forensics when people are going through divorce? Do you find your way into working with them or just with the attorney?
Mostly with just the attorney or mediators. But I have worked with financial forensic folks as well, but mostly with the attorneys or the mediators, the professionals in the divorce proceeding that are dealing with the day-to-day of their client.
Okay, and this was one question that I asked you before it started, so I wanted to make sure people knew this. But you also work with people who are pro se, who do not have an attorney. Is that correct?
That is correct, and they probably would benefit from this service even more so.
Yeah.
So in Illinois, anyway, you have to do a financial affidavit when you file a divorce. I don't know how common that is across the country.
It's very common.
So part of the financial affidavit is to fill out all your debts. And so going through item by item on your credit report is a great way to ensure that you're catching most of your debts. So at a minimum, going through your credit report helps you in that regard.
Okay, here's a good question for you that just
Sure.
came to me. Because I'm in the subpoena business, there's very few, well, the IRS is the only place that you can't subpoena that I'm aware of. But do you see a lot of subpoenas come through, like for credit agencies?
Yeah. In our litigation where we use subpoenas is oftentimes we're looking at, like, for identity theft cases, which is a lot of what we do. You're looking at the hard inquiries. So in your credit report towards the bottom, after all of the accounts, there'll be credit inquiries, or it'll say hard inquiry, and there'll be a bunch of creditors listed,
Mhm.
and the client will say, I that wasn't me. I didn't. That was somebody using my identity. So we'll send subpoenas to all of those creditors to get the background information, the documents concerning why they pulled the credit at that particular time. So yeah.
So I know you guys are attorneys, so you can do subpoenas, but what if somebody was a pro se and worked with you? Are you able to still do subpoenas for them?
I never have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's only if you're representing someone, then you can do the subpoenas.
Yeah, generally that's the only time I've offered that service. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I think, this is a very interesting subject just because it's making me think that I need to do my credit report today.
Oh.
Because just understanding where we're at, and we never know when those times are going to come where things going to get on there that we don't know about, even if we're married. And this is the kind of one of the last questions about this. What if you suspect your spouse is fraudulently, even after the divorce, is fraudulently using your credit for their gain? Is that something that
Yeah.
even after the divorce they can come back to you and be like, look, this is fraudulent?
Yes. So that scenario has also happened. The best way to combat that from happening is freezing your credit. Which you have to freeze your credit. It's a bit of a process. You have to contact each of the big three credit reporting agencies, and get password information to unfreeze it. And then nobody can access it unless they have that password.
So if they tried to take something out in your name, it would just freeze it. They would be denied.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But that is a fact pattern that we've heard quite a bit. That soon to be ex-husband opened up X number of accounts in my name, and I had no idea. That we've had to help unwind those situations too. We have a terrible situation. She wasn't divorced, but husband opened up a number of credit cards in her name and then committed suicide. And in the suicide note was sort of his confessions, which included opening up a number of credit cards in her name because she was the breadwinner, and he was on hard times, and opening up these credit cards in order to do things that he was hiding from her.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's if it's, at least in Illinois and most of the places that I've litigated, if the spouse is not aware of it, it's still not appropriate. The spouse has to give authorization and approval to have his or her credit used.
Yeah, I think that is something that a lot of people fear, because when you're married, we always think, okay, just because you're married, then you're 100% responsible for what they do.
Yeah.
And there is some validity to that. And there's also, you just got to be aware and you've got to pay attention.
Yeah.
For sure. Anything else that you think that we've kind of missed that is important for people to know?
Not that I can think of. Something popped in my mind during the middle of this, but it's left me already. So I think I can't think of anything.
I try to ask as many questions as possible so that people can have really good information. And thank you so much, Jim. Like, this has been very informative, even for me, to be able to help people say, hey, this might be one of the things that you may want to consider. And I'm definitely sending them your way because you're the pro. I'm not. I definitely am not in that space. So
I hope as anybody listening, I hope they, is able to help somebody. That would be terrific.
Yeah, please reach out to Jim. So here's the last question for you is,
Sure.
What does divorcing strong mean to you?
Well, that's a great question. So divorcing strong would mean to me is sort of the rule that I learned early on in law school is that you need to be prepared. So the best lawyer in the world, it won't matter if they're not prepared. You have to understand, where you're going to the extent you can, understand how to get there, and bring professionals or people into your corner that are going to help you get to the goal you want. So in a divorce setting, being prepared would include, accessing your credit, but it would include understanding all of it. Where are you going to live? Think about those things. Being prepared. So divorcing strong would be going into the divorce, being prepared as far as where you're headed.
Oh, I love it. That is very, very, if you don't plan, you fail. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Right?
Sure, exactly.
That is something that people don't think. We usually do not plan for divorce. And it's not something that we get married to get divorced. But when it does happen, like my mom always said, Becky, it's pull your big girl panties up now. It's business. You got to get to work. And This is just part of that planning for the divorce and coming out stronger in the end. So thank you so much, Jim, for your time. And hang on just a second as I wrap this up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us on another episode of Divorcing Strong. I've been Becky Sampson, your host, with Jim Smith. Please reach out to him. Seriously, if you are just considering getting divorced, or if you are in the process or starting it or somewhere in there, or you suspect something beyond your credit, please reach out to him so that they do offer the free service that can pull the credit, but also be able to walk you through that to make sure that there's nothing on there that's going to be compromising. So as you know, we're always on Tuesday through Thursday. I do live episodes bringing you more experts across the country. And thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.